Hello everyone! Welcome to this very special segment of PodCoping, which, if everything goes to plan, you can find on PodCoping episode 23 on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and all your other major podcast providers. But you can also find this interview in full over on YouTube at youtube.com/gamecoping. So decide which way you want to listen to this interview, but no matter which way, I hope you enjoy it. As always, I am one of your hosts, Duncan Robertson, and today I have the honour of being joined by Alexander Winn. You may know him as the creator of the hit mobile game TerraGenesis, which has just received a huge new 5.0 update, but you may also know him as the only person to win a Cine Golden Eagle Award in high school, or as the creator of the Halo Machinima series, the Codex series. He's an indie game developer, a writer, producer, director, and on top of all of that, he is the CEO of Edgeworks Entertainment. Alexander, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Of course, thanks for having me.
No, not at all. So I thought, just to get started, we would do a kind of intro round of some kind of questions so people can get to know you and your sense of games and stuff and how you maybe got started in game development. So you originally started as a filmmaker, I'm right in saying, right?
Yeah, so I went to USC Film School, and the plan was to, go work in Hollywood and make movies. And as I was doing that, I got not even a day job, just kind of started making websites for people to make a little extra cash. And then that became a pretty lengthy job of making like full web tools for companies so they could handle invoicing and that sort of thing. And then web design became app design, and then app design became game design. And all of a sudden I'm sitting here with video games and,
Yeah, so that's a pretty crazy journey. So were you like a fan of video games before then, or was it kind of just...
Yeah, definitely. And actually, it's one of those things where kind of with the benefit of hindsight, I looked back and realized that I was actually always into game design because I'm a strategy game guy. I like, Civilization and StarCraft and all of those. But even as a little kid, I realize now I was making scenarios for Civ 2, and I was making mods, and I was making all of these things, and that's game design. That's creating a new game out of an old one. So, and even on the filmmaking side, a friend of mine and I made a web series called The Codex that was really popular, and it was made using Halo 2. So video games have definitely always been there. It just wasn't where I expected to end up.
Yeah. No, that's really cool, because I was kind of the same. I don't make games and I don't design them, but I kind of realized that as I got older, the more I appreciated video games and the more I played them, the more I recognized design and I'm a big fan of that kind of discovery.
Right.
So, okay, you mentioned Civilization. What would you say are maybe your favorite games of all time?
Of all time, Alpha Centauri would definitely be up there. I find myself still playing a lot of Civilization 4. I was actually just playing that this weekend.
Nice. I know there's a lot of debate between Civilization fans as to which one is the best, because I feel like everyone has a different Civ game that's their favorite.
Yeah, exactly. It's like who's your favorite Doctor on Doctor Who? Everybody's got who's your favorite James Bond. So Civilization, Alpha Centauri for sure. I've got a special place in my heart for Halo because of because of the Codex. And Master of Orion, they're a whole bunch. I loved Rise of Nations for years. Yeah, mostly strategy games, but I'm a big fan across the board.
Okay, yeah. Because all your games, I'm right in saying, have been on mobile. So is the focus kind of, have you always been a mobile kind of gamer, or have you preferred PC stuff?
To be honest, I'm actually not that big a mobile gamer. It actually happened kind of backwards. I learned how to make apps, and I was making a whole bunch of different apps, and TerraGenesis was actually my 25th app on the App Store. But most of them weren't games. In fact, only 3 of them were games. Most of them were little like one-off single-use apps for things like a compound interest calculator for stock investing, or one that I really enjoy and use all the time myself is an app called Multiplex, which is it has 2 functions. The first is I'm the kind of guy who likes to listen to movies and TV shows like when I go to the gym or when I'm driving or whatever. And I've already seen it, so I don't need to look at it with my eyes. I just listen to it like a radio show. But on your phone, when you listen to a movie, if you turn the phone off, it stops the movie. And that just runs down the battery if I'm not looking at the screen. So I made an app where you can listen to movies and TV shows and turn off your screen, and it just continues playing the audio.
Crazy. I could use that, actually.
Right? And then the other thing that Multiplex does is if you want to listen to audio privately or in a loud environment, but you don't have headphones, you end up having to hold the bottom of your phone up to your ear, and you look like an idiot. But there's a speaker that you use whenever you make phone calls. Why can't you just listen to music like you're listening to a phone call and press it up to your ear and look like a normal human? And so that's the other thing that Multiplex does, is you can do that. You can play music out of the headphone speaker. So, little things like that. I was just making these apps that were, hey, I would like to have that app. And then one of them was, hey, I would like to play a game about terraforming. And then all of a sudden TerraGenesis happened. Yeah. So I didn't really come at it from a mobile gaming perspective. I came at it from an app design perspective. And then this one happened to be a game.
Yeah. Well, no, because I was going to ask what you would say your favorite mobile game of all time is.
Favorite mobile game of all time.
I have a very surprising answer for this, but
really
answer for it. Yeah. Well, my answer is Snake, because I don't know why, because mobile gaming has come a long way since Snake was a thing, but I just, every time I play Snake, I'm like, I can't stop playing this, and I really want to play it.
That's true. That's true.
But I'd be interested to see what yours is.
The Age of Conquest series is a fun, very kind of Civilization-like game series. I got particularly captivated by Lifeline. I don't know if you've played Lifeline.
I haven't, no.
It's the whole thing is just a chat interface. It's just text. There's no visuals at all.
Yep.
But the premise is that there's this astronaut who has crashed on an alien planet, and he's messaging you in distress. And he'll tell you what he's experiencing, and he'll ask you questions, and you will kind of give him advice. He'll be like, I need to go find food, but the sun looks like it's getting pretty low, and I have a feeling it's going to be cold tonight. Should I go out and find food, or should I huddle up and find shelter? And then you tell him which one to do, and he goes off and does it. And the whole thing plays out in real time. So it feels like you're actually sending text messages to this guy. So, if he says, hey, I'm going to go hike up this hill, I'll call you back in a couple hours, you close the app and you go about your day. And then 2 hours later, you get a notification that says, hey, I'm at the top of the hill. And that's a very fun thing to play around with, makes you feel like you're really experiencing something.
I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of the text-based games. I think they're actually
exactly
rated in this day and age. They're really great.
Yeah. And then I guess worth mentioning also is 80 Days and several of the games from Inkle Studios, which is actually how you and I met at GDC, was talking to the guys from Inkle Studios.
Yeah. You guys were talking about publishers and having a very kind of intense conversation, because I was at the indie booth just trying to meet as many people as I could, as that's just kind of how GDC goes, I guess. But I was just listening into this conversation kind of a little bit rudely, to be honest. Just kind of waiting for a moment to butt in. But that's actually a question I was going to ask later on, because you were talking about publishers and what it's like to have indie studios meet with publishers and stuff. I think for a lot of people on the outside of games development, looking in, there's always this kind of almost a tension between studio and publisher. And I'm just very curious. I don't want to get you in trouble if you've had a negative thing with your publisher before, but what is that kind of push and pull like with working with publishers? Yeah, so basically we do have a publisher. We have a publisher called Tilting Point, which they came on about a year and a half after TerraGenesis came out. So we were already successful, and they approached us about being a publisher. And to be honest, my wife and I, my wife co-owns the company, we were kind of dubious about the idea of getting a publisher, because we sort of felt like we're a success already. Like, why would we do that? But one of the things that was nice about Tilting Point is
They are a straight revenue share. They don't actually own the IP of TerraGenesis. They don't own Edgeworks Entertainment. We just share the revenue. And then, they can advertise like hell. And so they really helped get the word out about TerraGenesis. Very famously, we like to brag that in our first year, we got over 1 million downloads, which is phenomenal.
Which is crazy, by the way.
Yeah. But with Tilting Point's help, we're right about at the 3-year anniversary, and we just passed 13 million downloads.
Yeah.
So they definitely helped us scale up. The downside of a publisher is that you have more people on your team, and they may have, another idea of what you ought to do. So you have to have a real firm hand on the wheel of, yes, we'll do that. No, we won't do that. But the wonderful thing about a publisher is you get all of these people and their expertise without having to pay them full time. If you don't need a marketing department full time, you get a publisher and you're essentially paying for like 20% of a marketing department because they have other games that are helping to pay their salaries, but then they're also working on yours.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but the ones that it is for, it's a good thing to have.
Yeah, and
it has helped us scale up. So.
That's probably like a good thing in terms of that deal that you have with them, because I think a lot of bigger AAA stuff, that's when you don't have the revenue part of it, it becomes a little bit pressuresome.
Well, and it also depends on your goals, because for me, I have always, ever since the days of the Codex in 2005, I have always wanted to build Edgeworks Entertainment to be a big company. I want to have multiple games and TV shows and movies, and I want to build one of the big studios like Disney or Paramount. But that's not everybody's goal. A lot of indie developers, they just want to make a game. They want to hang out in their living room and tap away on their computer and make a fun game and toss it up on the App Store. And so, or even they want to make a lot of money, but they want to make a lot of money personally. They don't actually want to build a big company. They have no interest in like being a CEO. They want to be a game developer. And so for those people, maybe you don't actually really, it could go either way. Maybe you want a publisher because you don't want to hire a marketing guy and you don't want to hire a QA team and all that kind of stuff. So you hire a publisher and they take care of that and you can just focus on the game. Or sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's you just want the money. Like, why would I split my money with somebody else? I'm just going to do it myself and, and continue funding it myself. So, yeah, it just depends on what your goals are and what your situation is.
All right, well, should probably talk about TerraGenesis. So when you originally released TerraGenesis, you timed it with the release of The Martian. It's kind of this.
Well, I tried to. That was originally the plan.
Yeah.
I ended up not doing it because I only had a month between when I had this idea and when The Martian was coming out, and so I made a game that was just not fun. I mean, it was TerraGenesis, but it wasn't fun. Anybody who has played TerraGenesis will probably balk at this, but it's one of the things you couldn't do was build cities. So we're talking very fundamental gameplay things weren't there. And so I went back to the drawing board. So I ended up releasing it the next summer, about 10 months after The Martian came out. But yeah, The Martian was the original, like, oh yeah, I should probably make this game, huh? That was the impetus.
Okay, so there's The Martian, obviously this kind of big bit of science fiction from, I guess, the last however many years. But is there any other kind of science fiction that inspired you to create a game like this?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. So the two biggest inspirations were, again, Alpha Centauri. There are a lot of Alpha Centauri Easter eggs and references in TerraGenesis. And then the other was... What?
I've actually seen that online, people saying about that.
Yeah, it's... We have a lot of stuff, even down to one of our factions in Alpha Centauri. One of the factions is called Gaia's Stepdaughters, and in TerraGenesis, one of the factions is called the Daughters of Gaia. Nice. as a reference.
That would be me if I was a creator of something. I would just cram it full of Easter eggs for things that I like.
Yeah, exactly. It's just fun. And we never got a sequel to Alpha Centauri, so somebody's got to do it.
There you go.
But then the other and probably biggest inspiration for TerraGenesis was a series of books by Kim Stanley Robinson called the Mars Trilogy. So it's Red Mars, Green Mars, and Blue Mars. And these books follow the terraforming of Mars and then also the cultural development of Mars. So you go from, a couple astronauts living in a hab all the way up to a fully independent Martian society. And so that was a huge inspiration for TerraGenesis, not just on the terraforming side, but also on this cultural development side, that I am just incredibly passionate about the idea of new cultures developing in space, because it's so rarely shown in science fiction. There are a couple. There are the Belters from The Expanse. There's the world of Firefly. Every once in a while, somebody toys with what would a future culture look like. But mostly it's Americans in space. You look at Star Wars, you look at Star Trek, and it's mostly just Americans in space.
Yeah, especially more recently, all the space and science fiction movies have all just been like one person trying to survive in space alone. And it's like, where are the aliens? Where are they at?
Right. Or even just the future humans. I mean, we're talking about stories that are set in 2400. Even if it's set in New York City, it's going to be unrecognizable. I mean, look at what America was 400 years in the past to now. Mm-hmm. And then you think from now into the future, they're not going to be exactly modern Americans. They're going to have new fashions. They're going to have a new accent. They're going to have all of these things. And so that to me is incredibly exciting to think about and to talk about. Yeah. And so that was a pivotal part of TerraGenesis, was what is Mars going to be like? It's not going to be like Earth. It's going to be like Mars. Yeah. What does that look like?
Yeah. So have there been any science fiction things that have helped mold TerraGenesis, the more it's kind of developed and grown?
I think probably the biggest thing that has influenced TerraGenesis after it was released was The Expanse, which I had never heard of before TerraGenesis came out. I think I distantly heard about some show on the Sci-Fi Network, but but since then I've read all of the books and I've watched the whole show, and I've got my wife reading the books, and I'm a huge fan of The Expanse. And a lot of people have said that this dovetails really nicely with TerraGenesis because it does have this cultural aspect. It has a politically independent Martian republic, and they're in the process of terraforming Mars. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but later in the book, there's an even bigger focus on or later in the series, on things that are relevant to TerraGenesis. So, yeah, the Expanse has been a big influence after the fact.
So, you talked about a TV show there, and we said that you were previously a filmmaker. Did you find that your experience, I know you said, that journey that got you to games development, but did your experience in making films help with making games at all?
Yeah, I think so. In kind of a subtle way, but I think probably an important one. One thing that people say all the time, and that I was absolutely aiming for with TerraGenesis, was they say it feels like there's really a planet. Like, it feels like this is a real place that is actually developing, and it feels like there are people living on my planet. And I think a lot of people who come to game design just for the sake of game design, they're often more mechanic focused. Like they have a cool idea for a weapon mechanic, or a cool idea for a character design mechanic, or a combat mechanic. They think of it sort of like board games, where it's like, what are the rules? What are the pieces? And I think coming from a film background, my focus was more on what's the story? What are the characters? That kind of thing. And then the game mechanics really only existed to bring those out. The game mechanics are there to kind of introduce you to the world and allow you to do what you want in the world and then get out of your way. Another thing, an example that I often use is the Halo games, where Halo is incredibly story focused. And I think that's a big part of why it took off the way it did, because there isn't a lot of inventory management and skill trees and all this kind of stuff. You don't have to upgrade your armor. You are a guy. You can run and shoot. You can carry two guns at the same time. Go. And the whole game is visceral. You know, you feel like you are the Master Chief because you're not constantly being pulled out and shown these like control menus and stuff.
Yeah.
You just go. And so that was a goal with TerraGenesis, was to bring it to life and really make you feel like there are people living their lives in this game. And that, I think, probably came from my film school experience as much as anything.
Yeah. No, I like that. I really like the difference in approach that different developers have to making games.
Yeah.
Some, as you say, are the complete opposite and focus more on the mechanics and more on, you know, outright level design, and others, like yourself, want to focus on story and making things real. And you know what? Both sides of the spectrum there work, and I think that's really cool.
For sure. And it's especially tricky in a strategy game where there basically are no characters. Like, how do you tell a character-focused story when you can't see anyone's face? Yeah. So yeah, it was a fun challenge, but I think we did pretty well.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think that stands out about TerraGenesis, especially in the world of sci-fi games, is that it's kind of set in a lot of real-world science.
Right.
So where did the kind of decision stem from to set a game about terraforming in real-world kind of science?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of science and of space exploration, and especially of terraforming and the idea of transforming a world. And to me, I'm the kind of guy who sometimes gets frustrated when I watch Star Trek or Star Wars. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Star Trek. But sometimes when I'm watching Star Trek, they kind of space magic their way out of certain problems that, to me, that was the cool part, man. like why would you skip that part? That part's awesome. Yeah. And I think The Martian does a really good job of showing this, that like, okay, you're stranded on an alien planet, but you need food. And yeah, you could just make up some like food processing replicator machine that takes care of it, but why? Why not have the characters struggle to make food? And like, how are you gonna, you know, have enough oxygen? How are you gonna keep yourself warm as you're driving in the rover? And all of these challenges, these are perfect challenges for storytelling. This is drama. You know, these are the obstacles that your hero has to overcome. And so with terraforming, there was just inherently, there was this kind of Goldilocks idea where it's what I've started calling Goldilocks gameplay, where, you know, a planet that's too hot is no better than a planet that's too cold. Okay, you warmed up Mars, but now it's the Sahara Desert and nobody wants to live there anyway. You know, all of these things influence each other, and they can go too far in one direction or another. You have to kind of reach this balance point. And that just seemed like such a perfect game mechanic. You know, I've played a lot of Mars video games where it's just a red rock. Like that's, it's a rock and it's colored red and therefore it's Mars. But why? Like, why not let them drive on Olympus Mons? Why not let them explore the Valles Marineris? It's so much cooler, and you don't have to come up with it. You can just look up the textures from NASA. Like, it's just, like, you save. It's actually cheaper and easier to base it on real life if you're willing to integrate that into your design, because then you don't have to do any level design.
Yeah.
You know?
I guess
what does the Mars map look like? It looks like this. You know, like, done. Moving on.
It's also easier as well, because if you're having to make stuff up as you go along, there's the risk of you're going to write yourself into a hole at some point. Whereas, you know,
exactly,
you're limited in doing that if you set it in real world science.
Exactly. And, you know, the real world is so much crazier than anything a writer could come up with. I mean, come on. Like, you just look at the first few, you just look at the first few planets in TerraGenesis. Mars is famously Mars. Like, everybody has an image of what Mars looks like. But then you go to Venus, and the atmosphere is 900% or 9,000% as thick as Earth's. If I was designing a game about terraforming, I would never design a planet where the atmosphere is 9,000% as thick as it ought to be. That's tedious and annoying, except it's real. You know, the surface of Venus is hot enough to melt lead. Like, there's a challenge. Turn that into a garden. Go. I didn't have to come up with that, you know? Like, that was pre-built for actually Venus. So, Yeah, it's tricky for people to kind of get on board with it, because at the very beginning it feels like you're sort of giving up some of your opportunity to be creative and all that. Mm-hmm. But once you really embrace the idea of basing things on real science or real history, it's so freeing. And the number of opportunities, the thing that drives me nuts is you can look at The Expanse. The Expanse is set in a world where Mars has been colonized and some of the outer planets, and the government of Earth is in kind of a Cold War against Mars. If you look up the number of books like that are actually set in our actual solar system and don't have like aliens and space magic and stuff, there are so few of them. Like, how many movies have we seen that have been set in New York City and in London and even in like Italy? How many movies have you ever seen that are set on Venus? Literally none. Yeah, no. Probably not a single one. In the very closest planet to Earth, the number one closest planet in the entire universe, with the most dramatic landscape that anyone could possibly imagine, raining sulfuric acid. It's begging for a story to be set there, and yet literally no one's done it. It's like there's this whole playground of ideas that are free for the taking. You don't even have to license them, and no one's taking advantage. It's crazy.
Yeah, well done for actually thinking about that, because
thank you.
It's definitely benefited from it.
Yeah.
In your most recent update for the game, update 5.0 and 5.1, you've just said is on the way. You included the option to play through different periods of Earth's history. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tricky to when you're adding. One of the biggest requests we get from fans is more playable worlds. We want to play on more worlds. Okay, cool. But from a game design standpoint, it does eventually start to get redundant, where it's just like, oh, look, here's another cold rock in space, except this time it's purple. Like there are only so many combinations you can have of the factors in TerraGenesis. And so as we added more and more planets to the game, we started to ask ourselves, how can we make these interesting? How can we make this not just another Mars or just another Venus, but in a different color? And so we added the TRAPPIST-1 bundle, which is based on the real TRAPPIST-1 solar system, and it has a unique storyline. And the fans really loved that. And so we thought, hey, what if instead of doing other planets, Earth itself has been through periods where it was a desert planet or an ice planet or a jungle planet. What if we just did those? And so we crafted a story around these 7 historical Earths so that you can play during the age of the dinosaurs, or during the Cambrian explosion, or all of these or in the aftermath of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, which is, choking clouds and everything is dead. Incredibly dramatic moments, which, again, how many movies have we ever seen that are set in the nightmare wasteland immediately after the dinosaurs died out?
The Time Machine, and that's it.
Yes, Time Machine and The Land Before Time, the animated dinosaur movie goes, which was awesome, and I love that. And as you just demonstrated, we remember, like they stand out in our imagination because it's so dramatic and cool. So again, it was just obviously we need to do a planet where you can terraform freaking dinosaurs. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, I have to say, I'm a big fan of the inclusion of different periods of the Earth's history, because I think at the moment, at present day, it's important to kind of teach people about how to kind of care for the Earth and care for the planet.
Exactly.
And you yourself, I hope you don't mind me saying, have been a big advocate for games for change and stuff like that.
Yep.
So is there any kind of motivation there to help educate people about how to, care and nurture for an actual planet?
Yeah, it's definitely, one of the things when you have a game based on real science, one of the things that a lot of people say is that it's an educational game, or that it's edutainment, or that sort of thing. And I've always thought that it's not, because, you can play the Civilization games and you can learn a lot about history, but that's not an educational game. That's just a game about history. I think that there is a tendency these days to label anything where you learn as educational, but I like learning when it's not I like learning in my entertainment.
Yeah.
So it certainly wouldn't be true to say that TerraGenesis was sort of made to spread an environmental message. But it's more like there are these connections that a lot of people in the world haven't made, where they're like, hey, it would be awesome to terraform Mars. Wouldn't that be awesome? Climate, we thicken the atmosphere, we can make it warmer, we could raise the sea level, that would be great. And then you ask them, do you think climate change exists on Earth? And they're like, no, go to hell. You can't make it warmer and raise the sea level. That doesn't make sense. Like, come on.
I love that.
And so by playing TerraGenesis, it's not so much that we're teaching anybody, it's that we're sort of forcing people to make these connections of, if you can raise and lower the sea level on Mars, I tried and I flooded 3 of my cities and all these people died. And maybe now the next time they see a news broadcast about rising sea levels threatening cities, I'm not telling you what to believe, but it's certainly possible, and maybe we should talk about it,
Yeah. No, well,
so by presenting people with reality, you can kind of force them to grapple with it, however they end up deciding.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, I definitely applaud you for that, because I think more games kind of need to deal with that kind of topic.
Well, thank you.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm working on a piece at the moment. My next video is about a game called Abzu. I don't know if you've played it.
Okay.
And it's... yeah. Well, it got kind of slated when it came out as just the next journey, and it's, people were proud of that kind of form, but it's actually a lot deeper than that, and there's a lot to do with ocean pollution and all that kind of stuff, but no one realizes it because no one deals with climate change in video games. Like, that's not a thing.
Right.
So no, I definitely applaud you, because I think that's a really good educational step for people.
Well, thank you. And, it also exists on the cultural side is, I'm a big advocate of kind of exposing people to new ideas and not necessarily telling them or telling them how to feel about them, but just like, hey, this is a thing. And so, one of the most famous random events that can happen in TerraGenesis is the development of a cultural neighborhood. So one of your cities got like a Chinatown or a Little Italy or, one of those kind of neighborhoods that's very associated with a particular culture. And we have, Americans and British and Russians and Chinese and all the big ones. But then we also have like Nigerians and Mexicans and Moroccans and all of these sorts of things. And then we also have religious communities. You can get a Christian community, but you can also get a Muslim community or a Zoroastrian community. You can get a gay community, like all of these different things. And it's been interesting to watch people's reactions, because there are definitely people out there who, oh man, I got a Muslim community in my city. That's awful.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we get some real racist stuff sometimes. And then same with homophobics, where it's like, oh, we got an LGBTQ community in one of my towns, like a Chelsea or a West Hollywood. And people will get upset. But, the wonderful thing about being based in real science is I can tell people, I didn't actually advocate gay rights or anything. Gay people exist. Yeah. That's based in real life. And you sort of can't pretend that they're not going to exist on Mars. Yeah. And so oftentimes, obviously people who are being represented by these events really get moved. We've got some incredibly moving messages from people in the gay community or Muslim or, whoever. But even the ones who aren't, it's interesting to watch them. Oh, okay. So this city on Mars has a particularly high, Muslim community or whatever, and just kind of watch them integrate that into their understanding of what it might be. In the same way that the tapestry of America has a very heavy French influence in Louisiana, maybe there's a particularly heavy Polish influence in some region of Venus. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
No, I like that. Well, okay, speaking of exposing people to new ideas, do you think that a flat earther has ever played your game? And if so, what do you think their reaction would be?
Well, I think we definitely have gotten flat earthers.
No way.
Both the joking variety and the not joking variety.
Okay.
We've actually gotten a lot of hate mail from flat earthers.
Oh my god.
Yep. We get messages from flat earthers on a fairly regular basis, and a lot of the time they're clearly joking.
Yeah.
But there are definitely people who will send us angry rants about how, it's all a government conspiracy and that we're in the CIA's pocket and all of this stuff. And, mostly we just laugh about it. Oftentimes they post this publicly and our players will just rip them apart. But yeah, we definitely get messages, and I'm not gonna give anything away, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. So
okay.
Yeah, there may be something in that vein in the works.
Wow.
So
yeah, say no more. To be honest, I was like, I thought of that question as like, that would be a funny kind of thing to bring up. But I am shocked that people have actually sent messages about it. That's crazy.
It's funny when you have a game based on real science. One of the things that happens is that people start telling you how you're wrong. And so we get flat earthers a lot. The number one that we get is people who are absolutely certain that you can't terraform Mars because of this, and this. Like, the most common by far is Mars doesn't have a magnetosphere, and so if you build an atmosphere, it'll just get stripped away by solar winds. This is not even true. This was a theory that was proposed for a while, but has been pretty much disproven at this point. But the internet heard it and decided it was true. We get so much hate mail from people because you can't terraform Mars. This is ridiculous. We literally put Facebook ads on Facebook that have play now, like it's clearly an ad for a video game, and people will get on and rant about, NASA's budget. And we're like, guys, that this is a video game, right? Like, come on.
Yeah,
but
the internet sucks that way. 'Cause, yeah, we've had, like, even, our mildly, I don't even know if you can call it successful channel and podcast, we've had people complain and rant about stuff that has nothing to do with anything we've talked about. So yeah, people on the internet are crazy.
They needed somebody to rant at, and you were who they picked.
Well, yeah. Maybe they should play TerraGenesis and get exposed to some new ideas.
Yeah, well, one can only hope.
Yeah.
Chipping away.
Yeah, one flat earther at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
So a couple just kind of curiosity questions before we wrap stuff up. So I know that being the creator of TerraGenesis, you're a big fan of space and all that kind of stuff. So odd question, and I don't think I could ask it to anyone else rationally. But, do you have a favorite planet, and if so, what is it?
A favorite planet?
A favorite planet.
Definitely Mars. Mars is it's captured the public imagination, and there's a reason for it. The features of Mars are just so incredible when you start reading about them. It's got the tallest mountain in the known universe. It's got the deepest valley in the known universe. It's got all of these features that are so much larger than life. We're talking literally a valley like the Grand Canyon that would stretch from New York City to Los Angeles. Just these enormous features and dramatic and sweeping, and it's right next door. And it's just, there's so much about Mars when you start digging into the specifics of it that are so breathtaking.
All right, so do you think that there's other life in the universe? And if so, when do you think we'll experience that life?
I think, statistically speaking, it's pretty much impossible that there isn't life elsewhere in the universe, especially when you consider the fact that there are at least 4 solid candidates for life just in our solar system. I mean, obviously Earth has life. Mars seems to have had all the ingredients for life at one point, if not right now. People talk all the time about life on Europa. And then one of the sort of often forgotten possibilities was Venus. Right now, Venus is hotter than hell, but it wasn't always. It could have been another Earth. It's almost exactly the same size. It has a nice, rich atmosphere. You could have had life evolving on Venus that eventually got wiped out when the greenhouse effect ran away. So if we're talking about 4 solid candidates for life just in our solar system, what are the odds that there isn't life out there in the rest of the universe?
There has to be, right?
Yeah, just statistically speaking. As for when we will encounter it, I have a feeling that it's going to be I think we're probably going to discover either in person, like when we land on Europa, or through a telescope, we like detect organic compounds in an atmosphere light years away. I think we're going to detect some kind of life in probably not too much longer. But I think it might be a really, really, really long time before we encounter any life that's actually like interesting. That's not just microbes and stuff. But yeah, I would be surprised if it was more than 100 years or so before we discovered something.
Yeah. All right. And last major question. So I recently watched the Voyager documentaries on Netflix. You know, the Voyager.
Okay.
That's the right one, right? The probes that you sent out into space and the golden record and everything. I was shocked to hear that the only contemporary song on the golden record, the one record that we sent out into the furthest expanses, the only contemporary song was Johnny Be Good, right? And fair enough, Johnny Be Good's a good song. But if you were to send out a golden record today, what would the 3 contemporary songs that you'd sent out be?
3 contemporary songs. See, this is tricky because I'm more of a movie. Generally what I listen to is mostly like movie soundtracks and then like swing music. Like,
well, it doesn't have to be contemporary. Any 3 bits of music.
I think probably.
I know. I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this.
It's interesting because, you know, as with the people who made the golden record, you start getting into why this one, not just because you like it, but what does this mean? So, for example, I could see adding one of the songs from the musical Hamilton to the golden record, because not only is it incredibly popular right now, but it also is a statement about who we are as Americans and then also as kind of the democratic world these days. And it also includes, you know, kind of overtones of diversity and cross-cultural exploration. I would personally want to put at least one orchestral thing, you know, like the Star Trek theme or the Star Wars theme or something like that. And then I don't know about the last one. I need to think about that.
It is a tough one. It's the kind of thing where, you know, someone asks you your favorite book and you just can't remember a single book.
Yeah, you just blue screen.
Because the only one I can think of that I would want to send out is Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. Because I feel like that's just like, if you ask, you know, a general consensus of people what, you know, the best song ever written is, I think a lot of people would say Bohemian Rhapsody. I feel like, you know, it's that mix between orchestral kind of, they have that classical kind of undertone thing, but it's rock. I don't know. Yeah. I feel like it would be.
See that. Yeah, I can see that. Either that or the other thing that I was thinking was something that began a genre. You know, like some of the early rock and roll, or some of the early, even maybe some of the early electronic music, something like that, that sort of can speak for a whole branch of music on its own. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah,
I mean, I still can't decide which ones I would send off. I'm constantly kind of thinking about it since I watched that documentary. But so update 5.1 is on the way for TerraGenesis.
Yeah, it's coming out next week, July 18th, I think.
Perfect. Play that. It's a sin. I've been wanting to play TerraGenesis this week, but I've been so busy at work. It's been on my phone downloaded. I just have not had a spare minute. But I'm going to definitely play it and plug it on the podcast. But yeah, if you're out there listening, play TerraGenesis. Look up the Machinima series, the Codex stuff. And yeah, is there anything else that you want to plug while you've got Well, we've got...
No, just TerraGenesis is free download on iOS and Android, and I'm told we do microtransactions the way games are supposed to do microtransactions. So give it a try for free. It really is free.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thank you, as I say, so much for coming on. It's an honor to have you on, and you're welcome on anytime.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.